History is full of bitter rivalries. For 6 long years, the world was torn apart by the greatest conflict mankind has ever known, World War II. On one side, the Allied forces fighting for liberation. On the other, the iron grip of the Nazi Third Reich. They were sworn enemies, destined to destroy one another until the very end. But in the final days of the war, amidst the crumbling ruins of the Austrian Alps, something happened that defied every law of warfare. A story so strange, so impossible, that it sounds like a Hollywood fiction, but it is 100% true. Imagine a medieval castle on a hill. Inside, a group of high-profile prisoners. Outside, a fanatical SS division hunting them down. And standing together on the battlements, side by side, are American paratroopers and German Wehrmacht soldiers firing their weapons at the same enemy. Welcome to Castle Itter. This is the story of the only time in the entire war where the swastika and the stars and stripes fought on the same side. This is Time Capsule, and today we unlock the most bizarre battle of World War II. Perched high above the Brixental Valley in the Austrian Alps, Castle Itter looks like something out of a fairy tale. With its thick stone walls and towering spires, it had stood for centuries as a symbol of nobility. But in 1943, the SS turned this medieval gem into something far darker, a prison unlike any other in the Nazi system. It was called a special camp. There were no barbed wire fences or mass barracks here. Instead, there were guest rooms, a library, and fine dining. This was a golden cage, designed to hold the most valuable prisoners of the Reich, the elite of France who had been captured during the occupation. Inside these walls sat 2 former French prime ministers, Paul Reynaud and Edouard Daladier. Alongside them was the legendary tennis star Borotra and high-ranking generals. They lived in relative comfort, but they were never free. They were hostages, kept alive only as long as they remained useful as bargaining chips for a crumbling regime. But as the Allied armies closed in, the golden cage became a death trap. The SS guards weren't there to protect them anymore. They were there to ensure the prisoners didn't live to see the liberation. Surrounded by beauty, the French elite were now waiting for an execution that seemed inevitable. May 1945, the 1,000-year Reich, which Hitler promised would dominate the world, was disintegrating in a matter of days. Berlin had become a funeral pyre, and the Führer was dead. As the Allied Iron Ring tightened around the heart of Germany, the once mighty Nazi war machine shattered into 1,000 pieces of chaos. In the Austrian Alps, the atmosphere was electric with fear. The chain of command had vanished. Across the countryside, flying court-martials, groups of fanatical SS, roamed the roads. Their mission was simple and brutal: to execute any German soldier or civilian who showed signs of defeatism or tried to surrender. To them, the war wasn't over until everyone was dead. In Castle Itter, the situation reached a breaking point. On May 4th, the prison's commandant and the SS guards, fearing the approaching American tanks, packed their bags and fled into the woods. For a few brief, surreal hours, the French prisoners were alone. They were technically free, but they were surrounded by a landscape crawling with desperate SS units looking for blood. They knew that if the SS returned before the Americans arrived, the castle would become a slaughterhouse. In the confusion, one man in a gray Wehrmacht uniform watched from a nearby village, Major Josef Gangl. He was a decorated hero of the German army, but he was done fighting for a dead man. Little did he know, his final battle was about to begin. Inside the silent walls of Castle Itter, the French prisoners realized their freedom was a mirage. They were no longer under guard, but they were trapped in a fortress that had become a target. With the SS roaming the surrounding forests like wolves, the former prime ministers and generals of France knew their time was running out. They needed a miracle, and they needed it now. A desperate plan was hatched. Two men, a Yugoslavian prisoner and a Croatian handyman, volunteered for a suicide mission. One after the other, they slipped out of the castle gates under the cover of darkness, carrying hidden notes. Their goal, to find any Allied unit before the SS found them. It was a race against the executioner's clock. One of these messengers reached the nearby town of Virgil. There, he encountered Major Josef Gangl. Gangl had already defied orders by refusing to retreat, choosing instead to stay and protect the local civilians from SS reprisals. When he read the plea for help from the castle, Gangl knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed a partner, someone with the firepower he lacked. Risking everything, Gangl drove toward the American lines with a white flag tied to his vehicle. In a tense encounter on a bridge, he met Captain Jack Lee of the 12th Armored Division, a German major and an American captain, two enemies now staring at each other. The plea was heard, the handshake was made. The most bizarre rescue mission in history was about to launch. Captain Jack Lee of the 12th Armored Division was a man of action. When a German major in a worn-out uniform approached his tank under a white flag, Lee didn't reach for his gun, he listened. Major Josef Gangl didn't just offer a surrender, he offered a partnership. He spoke of the French elite trapped in a castle and the SS wolves closing in. It was a scene that defied every rule of the war. On a dusty bridge near the Austrian border, an American tank captain and a German major spread out a map on the hood of a vehicle. Enemies just hours ago, they were now two officers speaking the same language, the language of a soldier's duty. Together, they hatched a desperate plan to storm the fortress. Lee decided to go, but it was a suicide mission. He could only spare one tank and a handful of men. Gangl, in turn, gathered his most loyal soldiers who were willing to turn their backs on the Reich. This was the birth of the impossible alliance. With a single Sherman tank and a small convoy of German trucks, they began their journey into the dark heart of the Alps to save a castle they had never seen. Captain Jack Lee didn't hesitate, but he couldn't take his entire company. He rolled toward Castle Itter with a skeleton crew, just one Sherman tank nicknamed Besotten Jenny, and a handful of American GIs, followed by Major Gangl and his loyal Wehrmacht soldiers. It was a ragtag convoy, a small line of steel and olive drab moving through the heart of enemy territory. As they rumbled through the castle gates, the French prisoners couldn't believe their eyes. They had expected an army, but they got a single tank and a group of German soldiers led by an American. There was no time for celebrations. Lee immediately began barking orders. He parked Besotten Jenny right at the main entrance, turning the tank into a steel bunker to block the gate. The alliance was quickly put to the test. Lee and Gangl worked together to position their men along the high stone battlements. Americans and Germans, who days ago would have killed each other on sight, were now sharing ammunition and cigarettes, staring out into the dark woods where the Waffen-SS was gathering. Then the first shot rang out. The forest came alive with the flash of muzzle blasts and the terrifying scream of anti-tank rockets. The 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division had arrived. They didn't just want the prisoners, they wanted to erase the traitors who were protecting them. The siege had begun, and for the men inside, there was no retreat. The morning of May 5th brought a storm of lead and fire. From the surrounding tree lines, hundreds of SS soldiers launched a full-scale assault. Their target was clear, the main gate, blocked by a single, defiant wall of steel, the Sherman tank Besotten Jenny. Inside the tank, the American crew worked feverishly, their 75mm cannon barking back at the forest, providing the only heavy cover for the defenders. On the high stone battlements, a sight never seen before took place. American GIs and German Wehrmacht soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, sharing magazines and shouting warnings to one another as they fired into the tree line. Even the French prisoners, men who had once led a nation, refused to hide. Former prime ministers and generals picked up discarded rifles, fighting for their lives alongside their liberators. But the SS were relentless. They brought up their own heavy guns, determined to blast through the gate and erase the traitors inside. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion rocked the entire fortress. An 88mm anti-tank shell had found its mark. Besotten Jenny, the heart of the defense, was engulfed in flames. As thick black smoke choked the air, the defenders realized the gate was now vulnerable. The real nightmare was just beginning. With the tank destroyed, the courtyard became a death trap. SS snipers had taken positions on the surrounding ridges, picking off anyone who moved. Major Josef Gangl, knowing the French leaders were the primary targets, stayed in the thick of the fire, moving from man to man to keep the defense from crumbling. Then he saw him. Former Prime Minister Paul Reynaud had stepped into an exposed area, unaware that a sniper's crosshairs were already closing in. Without a moment's hesitation, Gangl lunged. He didn't see a former enemy. He saw a man whose life he had sworn to protect. As the shot rang out, Gangl threw himself in front of Reynaud. The bullet found its mark, and the German officer who had chosen honor over a tyrant collapsed. He would be the only German officer in the war to die fighting alongside Americans to save French lives. His sacrifice brought the defenders the one thing they needed most: time. Time was running out. Inside Castle Itter, ammunition had dwindled to the very last rounds. American and German soldiers looked at one another, knowing that if reinforcements didn't arrive in the next few minutes, these stone walls would become a collective grave. Outside the gates, the SS were preparing for a final, massive assault to crush the resistance once and for all. In that moment of pure desperation, Jean Borotra, the French tennis legend, performed an act of sheer madness. He leapt from the battlements, sprinting through sniper fire and disappearing into the dense forest to find help. He wasn't just running for his own life, he was running for the last hope of everyone trapped behind him. In the courtyard, Captain Jack Lee gripped his empty weapon, his eyes burning with defiance. He and his comrades no longer saw the color of their uniforms. They were simply men standing on the same line, ready for hand-to-hand combat to defend their honor. Just as the main gates began to splinter under the immense pressure, the ground trembled. The thunderous roar of Sherman engines echoed through the valley. The American 142nd Infantry Regiment had arrived. The 75mm cannons screamed, tearing through the SS encirclement. From the walls, a roar of relief erupted as tanks bearing the White Star surged forward like gods of deliverance. The siege was broken. The SS fled into the deep woods as they realized defeat was inevitable. The castle gates opened, not in surrender, but to welcome brothers in arms. The strangest battle of World War II had come to an end, leaving behind eternal proof that even in the darkest shadows of war, humanity and courage can unite those who were once sworn enemies. The battle for Castle Itter lasted only a few days, but its legacy has endured for decades. It remains a singular moment in history where the lines of friend and foe were blurred by a higher calling. On that small hill in Austria, the boundaries of war collapsed, replaced by the simple, undeniable bond of shared humanity. Major Josef Gangl was buried as a national hero in Austria, a man who gave his life to save those he was once told to hate. Captain Jack Lee returned home, a decorated soldier who had led the strangest alliance of the 20th century. Together, they proved that even in the heart of the greatest conflict the world had ever known, honor has no uniform. History is often written in black and white, in winners and losers. But Castle Itter reminds us that the most important victory isn't over an enemy on the battlefield. It's the victory of the human spirit over the darkness of prejudice. When the world was at its darkest, a few brave souls chose to stand together, showing us that hope can be found in the most unlikely of places. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If you found this story as incredible as we did, don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the past alive. This has been Time Capsule, preserving the echoes of history, one story at a time. Until we meet again, keep exploring.